Hello and welcome to Two Words Wolves Pod. I'm Ryan Eichten, and with me is my special guest Jake Paynting from Howls and Growls. Jake, how you doing?
Doing very well, Ryan. Thank you for having me on.
Of course. Great to have a non-American perspective on this one. We'll see if you got anything different than what we got on. I see it's bright out for you. It is pitch black for me, so that's a fun curveball for this one.
Yes, it's the middle of the day. It's very hot, and so it's kind of the polar opposite.
It
to
is
what you're
very
probably
cold
dealing
here. That is correct. Tonight I'm getting out of town, going to visit my brother in Washington D.C. And catch that the game on Monday against Washington. So that'll be fun. But weirdly, there's gonna be more snow there than here in Minnesota. So not really escaping the weather as much.
Yeah, no snow here. I'm pretty good at my Fahrenheit to Celsius calculations. It's probably about 105 or 110 or something like that here at the moment. So it's hot, and my aircon is kind of good and bad depending on what day it is. So yeah, if we're on camera, we can see each other. So if you see some beads of sweat kind of cascading from my forehead, then
there you go. Why. Well, I think I would take 105. Australia would be like a dry heat, right? I've been to Phoenix. Is it?
Yeah. It's a very similar to Phoenix. I've been to Arizona, so similar. Yeah, that kind of dry. Very you can feel the sun.
So the cliche versus like that type of heat, and like Minnesota 105 is like because it's so humid, it's just death. Where the drier 105, is not necessarily the best temperature. Is maybe bearable. Usually if I'm out there, I'm at a pool, which is helpful.
Yeah. I'm down the bottom end of Australia, and it's definitely not as humid here, so I can't complain too much. As the top of Australia is that tropical kind of heat, and that's horrible.
Well, we can stop the chit chat, I guess, and hop onto the actual meat of the podcast. We're recording this right after the Wolves beat the Orlando Magic 104-89. We don't get many of these in Wolves land. It was pretty straightforward. They beat up on an injured Magic team. Weirdly, it's the one game Paulo Banchero is supposed to come back. He's there. He's going to make his debut back tomorrow. So they get a respite in these star players coming back. Where Kawhi played against his second game back, Zion was coming back, and now Ja's going to be back on Saturday. But no Paulo, kind of straightforward. They were up double digits all or most of the second half, but they've won 3 in a row. This was since the brutal loss where Ant scored 53 and they were never close. But Jake, just your kind of overall thoughts on the 3-game winning streak after the 3-game losing streak. That was kind of another low point for the team.
Yeah, it's hard because they are kind of oscillating between win streaks and losing streaks at the moment, and it is hard. Just when you think they've turned the corner, they kind of turn back down another dark alleyway, and then they find themselves back out of that alleyway and around a new corner. So it's hard to, I guess, fully invest your thought process into them being completely back. But I do feel like this starting lineup change has giving them a little bit of a jolt. Energy-wise, the team looks a bit like it makes a bit more sense with DiVincenzo starting, and makes more sense with Conley coming off the bench in a non kind of, it's better that he's not playing as much anymore. I think it's made Conley look better. He's making the second units and those blended lineups work a little bit more. He can play point guard again. DiVincenzo's the shooter and the kind of closest thing to a self-creating guard they have out there as well next to Ant. So it does feel like this corner that they've turned feels like a little bit different to other ones because there has been change that's made it come about. So I am excited by the last few games. I think today is a bit of a weird game. You kind of expect them to win against this injured Orlando team, even though Orlando, while injured, have still been pretty good. Like they beat the Knicks a few nights ago, but it does feel like these last few games, there's a difference between the wins and the losses rather than just the team is playing bad or they're playing good. It does feel like there's a tangible, difference in what they're trying to do and what they're achieving.
I think the last 3-game winning streak, the Detroit game aside, that one's kind of a brutal one. But like the Oklahoma City and Boston losses, where they're like frustrating because it's like it didn't seem like those teams are much better than the Wolves are. I wouldn't say they played bad. If they if they carry that to the average opponent, they win on most nights with that kind of effort. So,
Yep.
like the Detroit loss is so bad that it made the 3-game losing streak feel worse, but it's kind of a one bad game situation in a sea of good games. But I agree with you on the starting lineup. I don't think it like solves their like huge issues, like their Rudy Gobert on offense issues or their Randall everything issues, kind of. But I do think
Mm-hmm.
I've kind of this whole season as they've been struggling, kind of feeling like there's big questions to ask. There's how are they going to match up with X team in the playoffs? Like they're clearly not as good as last year, but I've kind of always felt like at some point they're going to regular season wise, they're going to start winning a bunch of games here. Maybe not a, what was it, 57 win pace last year, but like close to 50 win pace, what we expected them preseason, and at least enough winning where it gives them time to like now they like the last couple weeks, they just need to win games because they're falling in the standings. And if they can just like start winning games and give themselves a buffer, they can start mixing and matching and playing Minot more, playing Dillingham more, or whatever. But I agree with you on the starting lineup. I do think like we were just so desperate for any change, even if it made sense or not, just like something. And like the easiest thread to pull is Dante for Mike, just because Mike's going to take it well. Mike is going to take it well. And he kind of said that after the Clipper game where he was like, yep, Finch came to me. We were good. I completely understand it. And we move on. It's like, that's just like such a Mike Conley attitude to have, where maybe a different player that you would theoretically want out of the lineup might not take it as well. But I agree, like just it makes better sense with the rotations, especially as they're kind of like lowering Mike's clutch minutes in certain matchups. They can play Dante. There was a game, I don't remember which one, where it was like Nas has to close this game over Randall. And I texted Jack Borman, like he's like, dude, he's played the last 12 minutes straight. He has to come off them. And I was like, that was so frustrating because it was like such a clear mood, but you also can't play someone, unless you're Tibbs, you can't play someone the whole second half or whatever, especially a big. Like, so I do think this helps them get Dante more clutch minutes. And one thing I've been thinking about is like, Anthony Edwards to me is like the only person that has to finish the game. Everyone else, I feel like you can mix and match with. So I just think Mike has just clearly looked better. Would you agree with that? These last 3 games, finding his shot more, playmaking better, just seems to be working out better for him.
Yeah, well, I think we've heard Finch say multiple times this season, last season as well, that Conley needs to look for his shot more, and when he is in these little funks, or just when the team is in a funk, that him being more aggressive is the way to get out of that funk. But I think with the configurations that they were going with the old starting lineup, I don't think he could do that. Like, it wasn't like I didn't feel like he was choosing not to be aggressive. I felt like he couldn't be aggressive because his usage was so low. Randall's going to have the ball a ton and handle the ball coming up the floor a ton. Ant's obviously going to have a massive usage. Gobert's going to get the ball. Jaden needs the ball at times. It just felt like Conley was slowly sliding down the pecking order while his coach was kind of bandying for him to be more aggressive. And it just felt like there was a little bit of a disconnect between those two things working. And now that when he comes off the bench, he comes in with that second unit or that blended lineup to in the end of the first, start of the second, he can actually be aggressive. I think we saw tonight there was times where he was even like more aggressive than I've ever seen him for Wolves in his Wolves tenure. Like, he's trying to get to the ring. He was missing some shots at the ring, which is kind of fine in my opinion. When it comes to Mike, because in the aggregate he's going to grade out to take good shots and to make more shots than he misses if he's in lineups and stuff where he feels confident and where he feels like he has a role. So I think Finch has said this, where it's more about getting Mike in more comfortable and getting him a better role than it is just for DiVincenzo to improve the starting lineup. And I think they're kind of getting the best of both worlds in this last 3 games.
And like the downside with moving Mike was like his best pairing last year was obviously with Rudy, and they relied on that pick and roll combo so much last year, and that just hasn't been the same case this year. And the downside is like fewer minutes with Mike and Rudy. But I think, like you said, Mike being more aggressive as a scorer, they just need it, and they probably can try to be a little bit more intentional about matching up Rudy's rotations with Mike and the bench. And then like just thinking about the starters, that starting group just needs way more space. Like obviously Rudy doesn't shoot. Randall, it is his shot comes and goes, and even more so, Jaden's shot comes and goes. And so like that has just been such a huge point with the starting lineup. And I know just kind of following you on Twitter, like that's been, and your show Howls and Growls, like that's been a big point of contention, just everything going on with the starting lineup and the spacing and all that.
Yeah.
And those problems still exist with Dante, because they're the the McDaniel Randall Gobert pairing is still kind of up in the air if it works. But as long as they're, I mean, you have to play those guys, obviously. So like, as long as they're working better rotations throughout, I think they can kind of mitigate like the black hole starting lineup that they used to have.
Yeah, I think there's just less time in these last 3 games where they have 3 non-shooters out there. And I think ideally you'd have 0, obviously. On this team, you're never going to have 0 because Jaden and Rudy and Randall, I mean, Randall, I guess, is kind of a
McDaniels
quasi-shooter.
to a certain extent
But
kind of is too, yeah.
Yeah, but there's times where, I mean, you can survive having Gobert out there with just him because we've seen the Utah teams, we've even seen this team play good offense with just him in the middle. You can even sort of survive when it's Jaden and Rudy, or when it's Randall and Rudy, or Randall and Jaden. But when it's 3 guys and then you've got one of the best slashers in the league in Anthony Edwards, it just doesn't make sense as a theory to have this awesome downhill player like Edwards and then have 3 guys who teams are willing to help off. And then it was getting to the point where they were helping off Conley a lot as well, just because they were willing to sacrifice everything for Anthony Edwards to not beat them, and it was working. So I think, like you said, this isn't a complete salve having Dante kind of start in there, but it's a guy who makes threes. I mean, he hit another 4 threes in this game. And then you can configure better lineups where there's not that 3 non-spacers out there, and that seems to be working a bit better lately. And that starting lineup is working really well. I mean, they've got a 125 offensive rating, I believe, in the last 3 games, 28 net rating. So that starting lineup's working good. Conley goes and joins those blended or second units. That's working really well. Conley seems to be more confident with his shot again. So, like I said earlier, you're kind of getting the best of both worlds in terms of mitigating some of those spacing issues, not all of them, but some of them, and then bolstering Mike Conley's confidence and his role
and with
as
Mike
well.
just playing lesser minutes now this year, just as they're trying to protect him more, maybe just the bench role works better for him because they can get him longer stretches while keeping his minutes down. And there are almost certainly going to be games, and we've kind of seen it, where Mike Conley's going to close games and he's going to be an important part of it. And so they can keep those minutes available for him while also keeping his minutes sort of low, because another kind of downside of taking Mike out is they don't really have a true point guard on the floor. And we saw that.
Well, we saw that in that Pelicans game to start the second half, where it was just like, well, Dante's not a point guard. Ant wants to bring the ball up. Ant clearly isn't a point guard at times. At times he's a functional ball handler, but when you need a point guard out there to really calm things down, you've got DeJounte Murray swarming all over the place. Zion's running amok. It just feels like that you needed Mike Conley out there, and that's the give and the take of these lineups. And that's the situation, unfortunately, that Finch kind of has to deal with, where it's, we can blame Finch. I blame Finch for a lot of things, but he is when that's the decision, is your spacing's a bit better with Dante. You don't have the point guard out there without Mike. It's kind of, you pick your poison and hope you don't die. So they almost died in that Pelicans game, but I think in the aggregate, I think they're better with the spacing, and not just the spacing. I think that Dante, like I said earlier, I think he's their second best creator off the bounce, at least as a guard wing. Randall might be a bit better than him at it, and definitely has a longer history of doing it. But I think when Ant throws the ball back out to Dante, he can attack a closeout, get into the middle of the floor, and make decisions, shoot, pass, floater, dump it off to Gobert, kick it out to a 3-point shooter. I don't think Jaden Conley was having trouble getting past his man or having trouble with the floater. There was a lot of players out there who could do 1 or 2 of these things when they get to the middle of the floor, but they can't do as many things as Dante. And I do think that is as important for this team as the lack of shooters or the lack of, ball handlers, is guys who can attack off the bounce, off the catch, and get into the middle of the floor and make multiple decisions and do it well. And I think going forward as well, that is the biggest need for this team, is because you look around at these great teams. We played the Celtics and the Thunder a few weeks back, and it feels like they have
Mhm.
so many of those players who, when Shea kicks it out and Jalen Williams gets it, he's now an offense onto himself as well. Or when Tatum kicks it out and Brown gets, or Tatum kicks it out and Holiday or Derek White get the ball, they can kind of take the reins of the offense rather than just being a guy that benefits from their stars play. As Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Naz Reid, those guys feel like guys who benefit from the way Anthony Edwards can kind of crumple a defense, whereas Dante feels like he's a guy who can further the offense when he gets the ball coming out of an
Yeah,
Anthony
and
Edwards
the weirdest
pass.
thing when Dante was struggling early in the year, the shot being bad is kind of you don't expect it, but like that happens with shooters. It's a high variance thing, and it's not surprising that he's since shot the ball well, or at least to what we'd expect. What the weird thing is, like on those drives you talk about early in the year and still a little bit now, he just has these. He gets caught in the air and has these just. He had one tonight that was just brutal to
Yeah,
watch,
yeah.
and I don't think those will last either, but it is, you do wonder if the spacing is affecting him there, or if it's just kind of a bad stretch learning to play with a new team,
Mm-hmm.
all that stuff. He did talk about like it took him mentally a good month or two. I don't remember what game he said this, mid December. Like he was still kind of mentally recovering, probably not a good word, but like he was still like mentally grasping the trade. And I'm sure Randall to a certain
Mm-hmm.
extent too. So I I think Dante is going to be probably in the starting lineup the rest of the year, just because he's very clearly one of their 5 best players.
Yeah. And like you said, I think with Dante, a lot of these turnovers come not. I wouldn't blame them on Rudy Gobert, but it feels like him and Gobert get into this little
Yeah.
tango in the middle of the floor where Dante doesn't know whether he can just throw it up to him, whether he needs to shoot a floater himself. And then I think we see those turnovers when, well, especially we saw that one tonight where he gets in the air and tries and decides that Gobert or the floater are no longer an option. And then he's in the middle of the paint and he's trying to hurl the ball back out to the 3-point line kind of without looking
Yeah.
where his options are. And yeah, but I do think with Dante, it's a bit like the point guard and the shooting aspect. It's like you have to pick your poison. Do you want a guy who might be a little bit higher turnover than that, certainly than Mike Conley, or do you want a guy who can't break past that first line of defense like Conley has been struggling to a bit more this season? And then we see that Conley now can do that a bit better when he plays
Mm-hmm.
backup point guards or when he's facing second units. Because yeah, I'm at the moment really stuck on this hill that this team just doesn't have enough creators offensively, and that kind of lowers their ceiling and makes those spacing
Mm-hmm.
issues feel worse because there's no one who can get the ball to Gobert. There's no one who can get Julius Randle in better positions. There's no one who can play alongside Jaden McDaniels and make him more of a threat in the dunker spot or as a cutter or things that Cat
Yeah.
could do a bit better. But even then, even last season, I thought the same thing, that they just need one more creator. And I think hopefully going forward, it's Rob Dillingham. I think that's what they had in mind when they drafted him. Is it's another guy who can get downhill and make a bunch of decisions in the middle of the floor. But right now, I do think you're kind of just making the best of a pretty bad situation in that aspect. And I think Dante might be the top of
Yeah,
that list.
for sure. And with the Dillingham thing, it's kind of too bad he's got this ankle injury that's either held him out the past month or so, or I'm not sure how healthy when he was active on the injury report. I'm not even sure how healthy he was because he was right back on it a couple days later. So that's too bad. But when he has been in there, at least offensively, he's looked pretty good. I mean, it's up and down 19-year-old rookie stuff that you'd expect, but you see what they see in him. The issue is going to be defense, but on the bright side, it's not a effort issue defensively, or it's not like a not understanding. It's there. I just remember those games where he's playing where he's just in the right spot and the guy just shoots over him and makes it. It's just like that's too bad.
Yeah. Well, I watched every single Kentucky game after he got drafted. I do keep a pretty close eye on college basketball and made kind of Wolves draft notes throughout the season. But I obviously went back after they drafted him, and I thought the effort was an issue in college as well. I thought he looked lost a lot. I think he didn't try as hard as he was noticeably a low effort defender. along with the fact that he's tiny, and it's, that just makes life hard for him as a defender. But I've been really impressed with the way he has seemed to have wiped out a lot of those issues, and now it just feels like it is that he's small, and that's always going to be an issue, and he's never going to be a great defender, or probably even like an above average defender. But I think you can hide a player on defense a much better if they're also trying. That was kind of the issue with D'Lo, is that you tried to hide him, but then he also didn't try. So it's and Randall was a bit the same at times, especially at the start of the season, where if you're not putting in the effort, it doesn't really matter where. Where you're hidden on the court, someone will find you, especially in today's NBA. So I've been super impressed with Rob. I'm not sure how much of a real chance he gets this season, especially if they're starting to figure some things out with Dante and Mike in that point guard kind of rotation. But, it's one for the future. I think they've always been looking at it maybe with a longer view than we have as fans. So I do think that, like I said, he's that creator bet that they're making, and they're hoping that gamble pays off. And then I do think that if they have a draft pick, I think that when they're going forward and acquiring players in whatever way that is, I think that extra creator is going to be at the top of the list, because every great team has at least two right now.
And that was a big reason they lost to Dallas, is that they were just loading up on Ant, and they were doing a good job everywhere else, and they just didn't have another person. And kind of with the whole Wolves thing is that with Gobert, there's always going to be this push and pull of, well, is your offense ever good enough with him on the court? But obviously your defense is, they're probably like 6th in defense, and it's probably going to go up after tonight. And they will I would guess they'd be a top 5 defense the rest of the year, but their offense continues to be below average or almost bottom 10. But certainly as he's still playing well, like taking him off the court in large patches isn't going to solve anything, because now you're just feels like you're going to be mediocre on both ends. So as Gobert
well, we saw that in the Pistons game. It felt like Gobert just couldn't be on the floor offensively. It was so toxic with him out there, that offensive structure. But then they took him off, and it was just three ball, back cut, layup. And it does feel like the kind of the gift and the curse that this team has right now is that I think a lot of teams would kill to have a guy who makes your defense so much better and almost walking top 5 defense, even with offensive limitations. I think as fans, we get very narrow, me included, maybe me especially. We get so narrow on the bad things, and that this is happening to my team, when really a lot of teams would probably love to have, a Gobert type figure who instantly makes you a great defense when he's on the floor. So, but the opposite side of that is that I felt last season in the playoffs, in that Dallas series that you speak about, that it just felt like it was like a modern NBA was beating the Wolves. That at some point you are going to run into a team who you just can't hold to 105 defensive rating ever, and that felt like what the Mavericks were. And if you don't have the offense to at least fight fire with fire for a game or 2 games in a series, it's going to be really hard to beat that team. So I think that's what they're working. That's why the offense has been so important for this team, is because they will win a lot of games. They're going to. They won this game against the bad Magic team because they were just really good on defense. They scored 104 points. Ant shot 5 of 19 for the game, and they cruised for the whole night because they are just so good defensively. Gobert was great defensively in this game, great against the Pelicans, and that will win you a lot of regular season games. And I do think that, like I said, if you're taking a step back from that narrow view, it's really cool that this team is expected to win regular season games and can win regular season games with a pretty bad offense, because they're just so good defensively, because mainly of Gobert. But it's an old school kind of team, like if it's an ugly, terrible game to watch that's awful, I'm pretty sure Minnesota are going to win that game.
And I think, like, talking about the big picture, that push and pull of Gobert is interesting, because, like, in the short term, the answer can't be take Gobert off the court. I mean, there's certain matchups, obviously, where you do it, but, like, they need to have Gobert on the court. This team is not going to be good enough defensively without him. So to me, like, the answer is you gotta you got to get Rudy to be at least serviceable in the offense. And I thought they did a really good job at that tonight, and really have probably done a better job of it the last couple games. We can kind of transition to talking about Ant and his stellar play lately, but Ant had a good couple duck-ins where, like, obviously, like, I've always been like a big, like, you got to hit Rudy on the short roll, and there's been games where that has not worked, and there's been games where it's been phenomenal. I think on the whole, he's been pretty good in that action, Rudy has, this year. But like tonight, they did a good job of, like, Ant was like really like almost holding onto the ball, and he 2 or 3 times just found Gobert standing. Like, there's one difference, like finding him when he's guarding the short defender versus there's just no one there because they were all spread out and guarding the wings, and all Rudy had to do was catch, turn, and dunk. But so I think Ant has done a better job at that, and the main thing he's done a better job at is just scoring the hell out of the ball. Tonight was fine. They cruised. He had an inefficient 20-something points, but the 3 games before that, he scored an average of 35.75 points per game. Or no, that's the last 4 games, sorry. And he set the 3 games before tonight, he set the Wolves record for a 3-game span with 122 points. This is after the Boston game, where, in answer to a question of Jace Frederick, people did not like it, where Jace asked him, offense was good in the third quarter, you had 5 assists, you got off the ball, only had 1 shot. And Ant basically said, I should have the quote up, but I don't. That's not the way I want to play. And I talked with Leo earlier in the week where it's a bad quote. It's definitely a bad quote, but he's so honest. He's so brutally honest that I think people kind of went a little overboard with the reaction just because, and again, bad quote, say that up front. He's right in the sense of he needed to start scoring the ball more. It couldn't and hasn't come at the cost of playmaking, but he needed to score the ball more because for the month before that, he was just not doing well. So what have you thought about Ant's kind of recent play and responding to that poor quote against Boston with 53 points?
Yeah, well, I agree with you off the top. I think that it was we love Ant when he's honest, when it's a cool thing to say, and when, we really like the things he says, and it's a bit harder to love when he's really honest in the exact same way and it doesn't come out in the way that we all want to hear an answer come out. So, but I do agree that I think at the end of the day, I don't think he expressed this very well. Like you said, I think that was a bad quote. Like, you can't say that. But I do think that this team's not going to win games that Anthony Edwards has 5 assists and 0 points in multiple. Like, if he did that for 2 quarters every game,
and it was those,
and he finished with 11
assists. It was the last 2 games, both of which it was like the same thing where the OKC blasted them in the third quarter, and Shea had, I think, 19 points, and it had 0 shots, and 1 foul was his only stat. And then the same thing happened to get.
And he's watching that. Like, he's watching Shea go ballistic and probably thinking, like, I can do this if I'm not being trapped. And it's not, I think, where a lot of, NBA Twitter, which is a cesspit, but, things like that, it's not that he's getting double teamed. Like, there's double teams and then there's being blitzed off the ball. Like, it's different when you're setting a screen 35 feet from the hoop and now 2 guys are pushing you back over half court. You've got another 2 sitting behind them in the gaps, and this team's daring you to pass the ball to Jaden McDaniels. And you're not getting any reward for doing those things over and over. I think in the Thunder game especially, he made the right pass over and over again in that game. And I think that was probably the worst example all season of just every time he made the right play, the next player made the wrong play or missed the shot. And I think that probably played into the frustration maybe going into the Boston game. Then he has, a quiet night. Even when he does get open, he's missing layups, and his whole rhythm is kind of off. And then you get that bad quote, and then in a very Ant way, he'll do something or he'll say something, and then he'll kind of come out and not only prove himself wrong or prove the whole narrative wrong, but kind of just, it's like he learns things. I mean, like I said to you before, I've got a 4-month-old boy at the moment, and sometimes he goes to sleep and the next morning he wakes up and he's like learnt a new thing. He can hold his head up his neck works all of a sudden, and he can hold his head up. And that's what I feel like Ant sometimes will say something when he's right at the end of his tether, and then he'll wake up the next day and it's like, all right, well, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to do it better now. And that 53-point game, I thought was one of his best playmaking games all season. He only had 2 assists, but he just found the short roll constantly, whether it was Gobert in the first half and it didn't work out very well. In the second half, it was Randall, and he got a bunch of hockey assists and kind of plays that could have been hockey assists. And then I think the last 2 games have been excellent playmaking games from him while maintaining that scoring. Even when the game was kind of there to be won in the first half against Orlando, it felt like he was still the best player on the court. Like you said, he found Gobert a bunch of times, found Nas once or twice on the roll as well. Just felt like he's going quick out of the double, and maybe that's sometimes kind of trying to curl around it with the ball and get downhill. Other times it's just passing the ball back to Dante or Mike one pass away to try and disperse that double team quickly. Other times it's, finding Rudy on the short roll quickly. All of this stuff, I think his processing speed has been way better in the last 3 games. And you can see how much it does help the offense. So as much as I complain about spacing, there is the Anthony Edwards element there where he can turn this into a more profitable 4-on-3 situation when he does get doubled, if he's a little bit quicker getting off the ball and making those decisions. So like you said, like this whole podcast seems to be, it's a push and pull where you don't want Anthony Edwards shooting 1 shot in a quarter. Even if he is passing the ball well, the Wolves will win 4 games for the season if he averages 15 points a game. Like he needs to average 25 points a game at least for this to be a good team. But there's also this, he can't try and force that 25 points because that's when it gets ugly as well. So I think he's striking the right balance lately. He's shooting a lot of threes again. I mean, he's been shooting threes all season.
Steph Curry out there.
This feels a little bit more. Yeah, I know, it's crazy. This feels more like the very start of the season where he's shooting 15 a night, and all of a sudden, and that's almost like his way of combating the spacing issues with that first lineup. Is he just launches threes, and then when he gets into more lineups with more spacing, you see him dunk on people like tonight. You see him get downhill. You see him make reads going downhill for other players. So I do think it's a tough job that he's got with this roster construction, but I think he's striking a balance a little bit better lately, and hopefully that's not a flash in the pan and just him. Something's clicked. He's woken up and he's learned a new skill.
And I think one aspect of this push and pull that you talk about is during that cold stretch that we're hoping and I'm assuming is over, is about pretty much the whole month of December, excuse me. The cause of the cold stretch to me is part the atmosphere around him and the lineups around him and how the defense have guarded him. That's obviously the start of it, but I don't think he was dealing with it well either. So I think, again, like you talk about the cesspit of the internet, it's got to be one thing or the other. It's either got to be Ant playing like shit, or it's the rest of the team and the franchise are not doing him well. It's like, no, it's both. They're not putting him in a good spot, and he's not dealing with that good spot well. And thinking about the start of the season, people were just going under him on screens. Like when Rudy would set a screen, people were just going under him, and he was just jacking everything and making pretty much everything. And teams, not surprisingly, switched that up and stopped going under because he's basically shooting at like prime James Harden levels from 3 from pull up or whatever. And so they just started blitzing him, and it worked. And they're getting different lineups, and they've done a much better job. So like, I think the team has done a better job, and he's obviously done a much better job of it. Cause like, I think a lot of box score watchers of that Detroit game saw the quote and saw him get 53 points with 2 assists and assumed he was just hunting his shot. And I didn't feel like that was the case at all. I thought he was getting it. I mean, obviously you're hot, you're shooting more, obviously, but like, I didn't think he was like ball hogging at all. I thought the ball was moving, and either like you talk that stuff you talk about where he makes the right pass and Jaden or Randall don't get a good shot or miss a shot on the back end, or they were just like hockey assists where, he made the right pass and he doesn't get technically assists, but like the whole reason someone scored was him drawing defenders and making the right pass.
Yeah. I actually think that Detroit game was one of the best regular season games that he's ever played.
Offensively.
I mean, and he was pretty bad. I was going to say he's pretty bad defensively like they all were, but in terms of, kind of low stakes Anthony Edwards games, like that feels close to the top in terms of controlling everything offensively and then scoring a career high points as well on top of it. So it's just, like you said, I completely agree with you that he wasn't handling really bad circumstances well. And you can blame that on the circumstances, you can blame it on Ant, and as you said, it's a bit of both. I just think that he, in that slump, especially the back end of that really bad slump, it felt like he had almost just given up on trying to, trying to force his way through this issue, and had opted more for just kind of, I can't do this anymore because it's not working and no one's allowing me to do it. So I think there was, I would wager that there was a tough conversation after that quote with Chris Finch, maybe some of the other leaders on the team. I think it's got through to him that look, this can be hard for you at times, but you're good enough to make it easier for yourself, and we know what you can do when you do get that swagger back. And he's got it back right now. Tonight was a weird Anthony Edwards game where I kind of felt like he was playing well all game, and then I looked at the box score and he was 5 of 19 at the end of the game. So I think you can play, like, we weren't seeing these games during the slump. These were the shooting splits might feel the same, but they didn't feel the same watching the game. Whereas right now, I think, he had a poor shooting night, and it felt like he was one of the best players out there all game because he was making the right read, and he was really, and they were aggressively trapping him tonight as well, Orlando, and he just got off it quickly. It didn't even feel like a thing that was an issue. It just felt like they're going to put 2 on the ball. Ant's going to get off it. He might not get it back. He might get it back and shoot a 3, even if he was missing them. But it felt like the decisions were all clean. Whereas when he's holding the ball for 10 seconds, trying to look around the double team, that's when it starts to feel real bad.
I thought tonight was fine. Maybe a couple bad shot selections here or there. It's whatever. Bad shooting night, not a great shot selection night. They were up by a bunch the whole game, so you don't really need him to like go takeover mode. Speaking of takeover mode, I'm hoping that we look back at like the light or like the switch moment for him was down the stretch of that Clipper game where he makes those 2 just, I've seen it so many times at Target Center with him, those 2 just dagger 3-pointers. And I gotta imagine opposing teams feel that as much as we do. But those 2 just dagger 3-pointers, they're not even good shots. They're terrible shots. And he dug them out of that game. And hopefully that's just like, that is what I was missing from Ant. We can talk about the circumstances, and those are important because the whole organization, like I was saying, like when during the stretch of it, like it is on the whole organization to get him back playing. Everyone, Conley, Finch, all the assistants, everyone, because like the number one thing is this guy. You got to get him, whether like we said, Ant was as much responsible as anyone else. So it's as much as on everyone. But like what I was missing from Ant is like, where is this? Excuse my language. Where's this fucking killer? Like, where is this guy? He wasn't there. He wasn't there. And that was the first time, like we've seen it in a long time, too long. And it was just really good to see. The second one where I believe the Clippers call timeout, and he is on he is way down by the Clipper bench on the other side of the other side of the court, just screaming at fans. And that's like that same time. I mean, this is the pinnacle of it, but like that 3 that cemented Game 7, and he's screaming at the Denver fan, "Where you at? Where you at? Where you at?" Like that. I mean, you're not going to get. It's a regular season game versus Game 7, so I'm not like. There's a difference, obviously, but like they just needed more. Like, you're Anthony bleeping Edwards. Let's go.
Yeah. You can't let this season be defined by the environment that's around you, even if that environment does, especially offensively. If we're just talking about the offensive structure, it did feel toxic for a long time there, and it still does have some of that toxicity in there. That it just feels like you said, there doesn't seem to be a prioritization from the organization to make Ant's life easier. It does feel like at times it's let's make these things work. Let's make Randall work. Let's try and get Conley, in a better spot, and Ant's talent will carry him through bad lineups or through things that are a bit, not ideal for his game. And that was frustrating me because in my mind, I'm just like, this, no matter what you have to do, the first priority should always be, let's make Anthony Edwards' life easier, because if Ant is playing at 100% peak of his powers, we're going to win a lot of games because of him. And maybe the only player that comes close to that on this roster is Gobert defensively, where if he's peak of his powers, Gobert, it's going to drive winning. So I think, going back to the starting lineup change, I think Dante helps Ant more than Mike does at the moment, just because I do think that he gives him another knockdown shooter that he really trusts, gives him another guy who can handle the ball a little bit, work off the dribble. But in general, I think going forward, they still need to prioritize that a little bit more, that whatever it is, even if you get a bit worse defensively or whatever the case is, Anthony Edwards at his best, that's what you should be striving for kind of on a nightly basis. And I think, like it was frustrating us, it felt like it was frustrating Ant that they weren't doing that for him, that everyone, I'm not saying that he's frustrated with Julius Randle, but he might be frustrated that Julius Randle seems to be, they're catering to his desires a little bit more. They're trying to put him in places that work for him, whereas Ant's just like, roll the ball out. You've got a brick wall in front of you. Play well. And when Ant's playing like he is right now, it doesn't matter. But there's probably going to be other times during this season or going forward that he is going to feel like the walls are closing in on him a bit because the defense is so aggressive. And I think when that happens, and when because it's ultimately it's his fault, like we're saying, that he's not doing these things and that he's not playing up to his best. But I think when your star player, your franchise centerpiece, is playing poorly, everyone needs to chip in and do what they can do to make him feel like he can play better, or else you get those extended slumps that we got. And that's, as we saw, not good for the franchise, for Anthony Edwards to be averaging 20 points a game on 40% shooting for a 10, 12 game sample size.
Absolutely. And it's like one of those things where the cliche is like, give him an inch, he'll take a mile. It's like he doesn't need some grand change in what they're doing. Just like getting him in a slightly better spots, and they can start.
He doesn't need five shooters. He's never had five shooters. Maybe on some of those really early teams, rookie season teams, he might have had like 5 out lineups that were terrible at everything else. But like he's never had 5 out Boston Celtics with Porzingis kind of spacing. So like you say, if you just give him a little bit of rope, a little bit of leash to work with, he can be a superstar. But I think he felt kind of choked by that leash, and the DiVincenzo thing gives it a little bit. Him just starting to play better. I think his comments to the media, something happened with those comments whether Finch lit him up in a meeting, whether he went home and saw the public's reaction to it, whether his people when he's here saying, you can't say that, that this doesn't look good for you, or whether he just watched it back himself and thought, that sounded a bit loserish. But whatever it is, I think it worked, because now he's got that dual swagger at the moment where he's got that Phoenix Suns kind of series swagger where like he just controlled that whole series as a playmaker.
Yeah.
But he also was clearly the best scorer on the court every time he was out there. And that's, to me, even more than, the Denver series was obviously the peak of, many of our lifetimes as Wolves fans. But I think that Phoenix Suns series was the best I've ever seen Anthony Edwards play. And that's what they should be striving for, kind of as much as possible. Like you said, it's not the playoffs in the regular season, but if they can get close to that Ant, 2 out of every 3 games, they're going to win a lot of games.
In the games that you need them, like you didn't need them tonight. 20 inefficient 20's fine. Mm-hmm. But I do think we can kind of talk about like the big picture of this team. I'm pretty confident that like they've got this figured out, and maybe I'll sound stupid because they keep trading off 3-game winning and losing streaks. But like, I do think that they've got this figured out to the extent of they're going to start winning more games than they lose. I would still be pretty darn surprised if they were in the play-in tournament. I really think they'll finish top 6, and they have a pretty darn decent shot at the 4 seed. They're only a game and a half back. But on the flip,
on the
flip side, they are 3 back of 12 and 2 back of 11. Those teams, I can kind of pull up the standings. Like Sacramento and Phoenix have had almost worse downfalls than the Wolves. So I don't know, where do you see this team kind of finishing, like in a regular season sense, and what do you think like their playoff ceiling is if they do, assuming make the playoffs?
Yeah, I honestly, it's hard for me to, I'm going to fence sit a little bit here because I don't think they're going to fall out of the plane. Like, I think they can have bad stretches like we've seen all season, and it's not going to result in them being the 12th seed with
Mm-hmm.
4 games left in the season. Like, I think their floor is higher than that. We've spoke about it throughout this podcast. Rudy Gobert gives them the defensive floor. Ant had his worst stretch
He still played like
probably ever,
500
or
ball.
since his rookie
Yeah.
season, definitely. Exactly. So like, and they do have a knack for playing well against good teams. Like, I just don't feel like there's any team that they can't beat. I mean, like, it was clear the Celtics and the Thunder are way better than
They
them
could
right
beat out.
now,
They
and
could beat
both of
those
those
teams on a
games were.
one-off regular season sense. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't think any regular season game they can't win, and probably any regular season game they can't lose. And that's been like that for a while. But I think in the aggregate, they're going to win more games than they lose. Like you said, I think it doesn't take much in the West to clear out of that. I mean, it's obviously
Mm-hmm.
condensed in there. Like, it's weird. But if they won 5 or 6 in a row, all
Yeah.
of a sudden they're a top 4 contender and not a play-in contender. So and they seem of that condensed area kind of from 6 to 10. They feel to me the most likely to win
Yeah.
7 in a row, or to win 12 of 16 games or something like that. And that I think if they're out of the play-in, that's what I'm looking for as a fan. Like, I think I'm okay with them being a 6 seed because it was a tough start to the season. They're still kind of trying to overcome some of the issues with the cat trade, and just with integrating these new guys, and just with dealing with players playing differently to last season. Like, Mike Conley was awesome last season, consistently awesome and reliable, and now he's coming off the bench. Even if we do like that move, it's still different. Gobert, I think, has been pretty clearly worse on both ends this season than he was last season. So they're dealing with that. I think if they get to the 6th seed, again, I think the Thunder are better than them. I don't think they can beat the Thunder in a series. I'm not sure they can beat Dallas in a series. Outside of that, I think they can win any series against any other team. I mean, I think they'd beat Houston in a series. I think they would, Denver would be cool to have that another series against Denver.
The beat writers I can tell you the beat writers don't want that. I think they're a little bit tired of going to Denver, but
yeah, well, I'm not. I have Game 5 Jokic kind of playing on repeat in my head whenever I think of Denver. But again, like, that's a series we know they can win.
Denver's a flawed team right now too.
Yeah, and they're a bit like Minnesota, where they're just clearly worse than they have been in the past. So I think if they can get out of the play-in, because the play-in, I would favor them in any play-in game at the moment, probably too. But it's just a it's a Russian roulette. Like, you don't want your season to hinge on one or two games, or 1 or 2 losses. So I think if they get out of the play-in, in terms of get out of it before the season ends, and they can avoid playing the Thunder especially, Dallas might be one of the teams that they end up playing in, like a 6-3 or 5-4. But yeah, I'm pretty confident they can be a second round, at least win a round. I don't think they can get to the Western Conference Final. I just feel like they're just noticeably worse. I think their older players feel older, and that concerns me.
I think they could only if the matchups rolled out right. Like, Memphis, with them, they haven't played Memphis, which I'm interested to see. Obviously, like, Jaw's back Saturday apparently, so that'll be good to see them. Obviously that's another playoff rematch from a few years ago.
Oh, that would be a chaotic playoff series again. I think if they were to play.
But like, if Houston is 2, Memphis is 3, and the Wolves are 6, that's a route to me that they could make a Western Conference. It wouldn't be likely, obviously, but like, I don't know, you roll out 45% chances out there. It's not, there's I don't need to do math, 20% or something. And that's kind of,
well, that's what it was at. That was what it was at last season. I mean, we've got firsthand experience that you don't need to be clearly the better team to win playoff series. I mean, most people, me included, thought that Phoenix was the absolute worst case scenario last season. And they wiped the floor with them. And then Denver, I would have bet on Denver to win that series as well. So this team, again, it has the talent where it can win on any given night, and it is it still is volatile in terms of it feels immature in the way that when they're high, they're really high, and when they're low, they're really low. And if they get on one of those highs like they did last season in the playoffs, then it feels like they can kind of, the ball rolls down the hill, and all of a sudden the momentum's going. So that I can foresee that happening, but I do think that they're volatile in the
Yeah.
bad way too. Where if they lose one game, like the Dallas series, where they lose 1 or 2 games in tough circumstances, and it just kind of feels like it's over. So I'm excited to see where it goes.
And I'll kind of lob this up to you last. I know you're fairly, I don't know, you can correct me, fairly negative on Finch, at least from the outside looking in.
Yeah.
Their offense
Yeah.
continues to be probably, again, like a game like tonight, like they blew them out, so it doesn't really matter. But like their offense continues to be below average and bottom 10. Do you view that as like a Rudy symptom? Finch is just not a good offensive coach. Like, what do you think this team needs to? Because they're gonna have to be at least above average if they want to make a finals run.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I probably am. I am negative on Finch. One thing I will say, in not my defense, but what I should say more often, is that I don't give Finch enough credit publicly for like constantly creating a great defensive structure. I rag on the offense, but there's two sides of the ball. The Wolves are constant. I mean, and it's not just a Gobert thing. Like, we have spoke about how good he is, but they're always good when he's off the floor as well. He gets buy-in from players. He runs it, So I think Finch is the part of the problem, part of the solution. To me, I just don't know how they become an above average offense consistently with Gobert, with the players, the Jadens, the Rudy, the Randalls, the players they need to play. Like, Jaden and Randall can't just not play. Like, that's an all defensive player. It's a guy, it's their second leading scorer. I mean, maybe they trade him, but the guy they trade him for is going to be flawed as well in some way. Or they're going to lose something for trading Julius Randle. They might get better, but they're not going to be flawless. And Anthony Edwards, I just don't think, like, Ant just doesn't mix with Rudy well enough. Like, I mean, going back to that Dallas series, it's just like I'm just watching Luka, and no one's going to be Luka. Like, Ant's not Luka Doncic, and that's Luka doesn't post to people like Ant does. Luka can't do some things that Ant does, so you can't expect that. But like, I always think of the spacing as well. We go back to the spacing. Like, the spacing could be better for Ant if he could throw lobs to Rudy. Because once he gets past that first, he could punish the gap help or punish Rudy's man for standing in the way by using Rudy more often. And all of that is to say that I just don't think they can be a good offense because they don't have guys who can use Rudy. And if you don't have guys who can use Rudy, he does become a huge problem. Like, he is just standing in the way a lot, and he's fumbling the ball a lot if you're not giving it to him in the right places. And I mean, I don't know, it feels worse to me even lately. It feels like he's just fumbling everything. He's getting stripped on offensive rebounds. He's breaking layups. And those are just things that they're part of the Gobert package, like, you get the good with the bad. But I think last season worked so well because you have to be such a good defense to operate without the level of Rudy helpers that they have right now. And Conley was that guy, but this season, when they run that empty side pick and roll, they just smother Rudy and let Conley shoot a floater. And teams work these things out, and especially in the playoffs. So the Rudy thing is so weird. I just think he is the ultimate floor raiser and like a pretty massive ceiling, stopper if you don't have guys who can really use him right. And even in Utah, they couldn't, they never made the Western Conference Finals. So
Terrence Mann game is
I don't know. I just
the quintessential example of that. Although defensively, that wasn't his fault. We can go into their perimeter defense was the issue there.
But yeah, I don't think it's just such a weird conundrum with Rudy, because without him, I don't know if they make the playoffs.
It's that same push and pull we've kind of been talking about this whole episode.
Yeah. So I think that's why it feels like they're always going to be a middle of the playoffs kind of team. Like, at the highest level, they're going to make the Western Conference Finals. Other years, they might crash out in the first round. Other years, they're going to make the second round. But I just don't think you can be a finals winning or maybe even finals contending team unless you get like the best run through the playoffs
Yeah.
possible. Everything needs to break right for you, and maybe it will, and I hope it does. But I just think more than Finch and the structure of his offense, things that bother me and bother a lot of people, I just think that it's hard. I think he's bad with lineups, or he has been bad with lineups this season especially. But I think when it comes to the offense, it's like, well, I don't know what. Sometimes I just think I don't know what else he can do when he's got Rudy out there and guys who can't use Rudy. And it's like he just like I was watching it with my partner, and she will watch the Wolves when they're on, and she likes them, but she doesn't follow
Sure.
basketball at all, and she often says like Gobert's just a defender on offense. Like he's just like defending Ant at the ring.
That's a good
And I'm like,
observation.
yeah, it does feel like that sometimes. Like she's like he's good on both ends at
Good
the rim
defender
as a
on both
defender.
ends somehow.
Yeah, so and that does feel like that when you boil it down to that simplicity. It's like, yeah, maybe sometimes it is
I
like
think
that.
the Finch thing because like the one thing I think people have like called for his firing, that is the most idiotic thing I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, and I would like to say in my behalf,
No,
because
I
I
wasn't
probably
referring
have,
to
is
you
that
there,
I am
by the way.
I have to. Yeah, but someone needs to take my phone off me during a game, because I'm a passionate watcher and I will tweet things that after the game I'm like, shouldn't have said that, like, so mate, I'm giving defense to all the other people who tweet during the game too. If you tweet Fire Finch on an off
You're
day,
a sicko.
then I've got beef.
I just think
Yeah.
like even like it just doesn't solve anything. It's like but whatever. I do think like maybe like the ceiling for Finch and Rudy as like a coach player pairing, maybe that just doesn't work, because I think about like the one thing you can hold on with Finch offensively is that Memphis year they were 7th in offense on the year and 1st down the stretch the second half of the year. And so I just wonder if you get like if you get like a Vando type as like the defensive anchor, if that works better with, because like I just remember like when they traded for Rudy, we thought, oh, offensively the Vando to Rudy is going to be an upgrade, and it's been the opposite. And so I wonder if Finch's style works better and I think because on his current contract, I think by the end of it, Rudy will transition to kind of where Mike is now, where either like a spot starter or comes off the bench, closes some games, doesn't, and kind of there now to a certain extent. But I just wonder if when they transition Rudy as like not the big center, if he's their backup center and they're playing Nas or playing some person they acquire in the next year or two, like if Finch's offense then does like catapult and they still have enough Rudy minutes, and maybe they stagger those away from Ant, where they are able to keep the defense in the top 10 and catapult the offense to like 7th, like that year they had.
Yeah. No, I think, I agree. Like it's maybe the best way for them to do it is you just need to have that kind of middle ground where there's a series where Gobert plays like 22 minutes a night, and you do it because you need to have those 16 minutes where you think you can beat a team offensively.
And it's like
then in those 22 minutes, you can...
Barkley, fuck Shaq and what they... Not... It's a bit much, but like... Fuck their narrative. That's what I'll say. Like, it's crap. And especially, oh my God, the Luka shot is just like this narrative bomb. He's been a fantastic isolation defender probably his whole career, but certainly since I've watched him in Minnesota. And I like you talk about tweeting games, I have to hold myself back from tweeting sassy things about another great isolation Rudy possession, another great isolation Rudy possession. Like the Boston game was such a perfect example. Tatum could not help himself. Their offense was humming the whole game.
Well, it was the best defense, the best offense that Minnesota wanted was Tatum,
and he
onto
hit one
Gobert's
shot
switch, because
out of
Tatum
like
was going
4,
to try
and I was
cook
just
him.
waiting for someone to throw up that one shot Tatum hit over Gobert.
Yeah.
Luckily, it didn't happen, but it's just like
and there's just these players that are just lightning rods, because like we watch Anthony Edwards hit step back threes over bigs every game. Every game he gets a switch onto someone. I mean, maybe not as much this season with the blitzing, but even now, like he's going to get a switch onto Jonathan Isaac. He destroyed on a switch tonight. Like he hit him with like 4 crossovers, took him to the ring, got fouled. Like, and it's like if that was Gobert, that would have been on every Twitter aggregator site possible. But it's like these guys are huge. They're just huge people. Like it's hard. And Gobert, the problem I think that he has is that he knows it looks worse for him if someone takes him to the rim. And he always gives them that step because it's hard. Like, he can't just stay body to body laterally with even Luka. So he gave him that half a step. Luka hit the step back.
And on
the rest is history.
Specific possession, he was like very clearly not giving him that because they were up 2. He was like very specifically not. And Luka is just so damn good that he even baited him. Like there's like a good slow mo possession for like the camera on the other rim where you could just see Rudy like I'm gonna press up. You're gonna go around me if you tie the game. So be it. And he just gives him a little bit of a shake, and Rudy takes a half step back, and he hits the pretty much a series clinching shot on him.
Yeah. You've struck a nerve with me because I just think the way that people view these plays, and any sort of play where someone does something so cool, like it was so cool what Luka did. It was cool him talking trash, and even as a fan who was heartbroken at the time watching that, but like in my mind, I just can't believe that it's about how bad Rudy is after that happens and not how good Luka Doncic is for, pulling off a step back from 28 feet, hitting that shot to win the game. Like, in my mind, I'm just like, that's what we should be talking about, is how cool it is that Luka Doncic can do that with the basketball, and not that the center that he had switched on him didn't block the shot or have it, because he ended up, and it wasn't even the worst contest in the world. Like, even after all of the trickery from Luka, and I'm on a tangent here, but it's just one of my pet hates is that we don't celebrate the guy who dunked it. We celebrate the guy who got dunked on. We diss the guy who got dunked on. Like, whereas I'm just like, I want to talk about how cool it is.
Except John Collins. We'll dunk on him. That's fun.
Well, John Collins, is he still with us? He's actually played well this season.
Good for him.
Yeah, he's actually been really good. There was a few dark moments where I was like, maybe Julius Randle and John Collins could be a trade, but then I was like, no.
But yeah, I think I'll bury this in the end of the pod here. But like, I was disappointed when Inside the NBA got picked up by ESPN, because I think that show specifically does such a disservice for the league. If I was the league, I would be like, no, you don't get to just come on every night and crap on our product. The
other night when LeBron did that dunk, that switching hands midair dunk, and halftime was Charles Barkley the whole time complaining about them showing too many replays, and that they ended up showing Michael Jordan highlights after it, and it was like, oh, this is horrible for the product. Like, we should be talk about how cool that was.
Only talk about that for all I care. Just talk about the 40-year-old guy dunking on people. That's crazy.
Yeah. Can I add another thing that I just saw to add to the end of this podcast, just because it is a Wolves podcast? Terrence Shannon in the G League today, just now finished, 47 points. 47 points, 5 boards, 17 of 28 shooting, 4 of 7
They have
from 3.
so many people who, baseball, I don't know if you're familiar with the system there. There's like the minor leagues, the highest level is called AAA. And so like there's this type of player that's not good or too good for AAA. They just crush. And then they come up to the majors and they're not quite good enough. Call it quad A player. And the Wolves have like 8 guys. Like Shannon, Leonard Miller, Luka Garza. He's not a G Leaguer anymore, but still, like, they just have so many guys.
He's the perfect example, though, Garza, where it's like, if you put Garza in the rotation for 20 games, we would all hate him by the end of that 20 games.
Actually, last year, he played a couple games. It's fine.
Yeah, well, yeah. But imagine, like, if Luka Garza played a playoff series, imagine what Luka Doncic would do to him if he did that to Gobert. But yeah, I think the good thing with Shannon, and the good and the bad thing, is that he's a rookie. So it's kind of like, well, he might be better than that. But also the bad thing is that he's 24. So it's like, if you're not going to play him soon, I don't really know why they drafted him. But that's another tangent.
For sure. My favorite Luka Garza stat will always be is last season he was like 4th in points per minute played. And like the top 3 guys were like Luka, Shea, and Giannis. It was like Luka, Shea, Giannis, Luka Garza. It was like, because it was like he'd score a point a minute or whatever.
There's bad teams out there who could have 18-point Luka Garza right now if they had just given him like $5 million.
If Luka was on
this season,
like, or even just like an injured team like we saw Orlando, I would like their whatever team's defense would be really bad. But like they would put him on Utah. He would score double-digit points if you gave him enough minutes.
LaMelo Ball would feed him 9 times. Like, he would average 23 a game for Charlotte.
Isn't he leading the All-Star voting?
Well, I think so, yeah. I didn't know he still had that kind of following.
Well, now his brother, this is real tangent. Now his brother's got this popular song.
It's been stuck in my head all day.
I literally have not listened to it, and I just know that it's a thing. And
No, I don't. I don't know this. Like, never listened to the song. I've just heard the chorus, like, on these, the players walking into the arena, and the social media person says finish this lyric, and then and it's just stuck. I've been singing it around the house.
Apparently, he's
all day.
getting real life record labels reaching out to him.
Well, yeah, I think apparently it's actually good and not just good for a
former G leaguer. Did he get? I gotta look it up. Did he step on a court in a regular season game? I don't think so.
Oh, he must have played. He must have played 1 minute of NBA basketball.
Autocorrect or autofill is wants me to go find the song. Basketball Reference. Here we go.
Nah.
It's blank.
Nah,
it is literally blank.
Yeah.
So no, he has preseason minutes, so I do remember that.
I guess the world's healing somewhat. If LiAngelo Ball's never played a minute. Maybe he's found.
Your dad said all 3 of them would be successful, and he was right. He did it.
Yeah, well, he, and Lonzo's back, which is dope. So I'm happy about that at least. Lonzo seems like the most normal one of the 3.
I mean, LiAngelo. Final weird ass tangent. If you remember when he was, I think in college, they were in China and he stole something.
Did he steal something? Yeah.
Donald Trump got him out of prison, Chinese prison. I believe that was the story, which is it.
I mean, I think you started with a welcome to America, and that feels like a welcome to America sign off.
That is true. We can. President-elect Trump is mentioned. We can be done. Jake, you got anything to plug? New Howls and Growls coming up, I'm assuming.
Yeah, there's Howls and Growls coming out all the time after most games. Just type in Howls and Growls on YouTube, press subscribe, like, all that good stuff. Help me out. Listen to this podcast, rate, review. I have been listening to this from the start, which I can happily say that I don't have to lie about that just as you asked me on. That. I saw you posted. I think I retweeted one of your posts right when you started because I love Wolves content in general, and I want more people doing it. So I'm listening to it. I know Leo. Me and Leo used to write together for Canis. So I know I appreciate his views. So I thought I'll tune in, and it's awesome. So yeah, I'm happy that I could be on it. I'm happy that you invited me, and I'm happy that you two are doing really good work.
I appreciate that. And one of Travis, who's always been on after losing streaks. So I promised him to get him on after a winning streak. Well, sir, you are now on after a winning streak. So I will be reaching out to you at the zenith of the season to the opposite situation as Travis. So.
Yeah, well, you need to hit me up early like you did because you hit me up before the winning streak. So, we knew I was coming on after the Orlando game, but we didn't know that they were going to be on a 3-game winning streak. So maybe I am the good luck charm. That
sounds great. Well, everyone listen to Howls and Growls. And like I said, I'm going to Washington, D.C., so I'll be there early through this next week. So Leo and I's pod will be mid to late next week and just one pod next week. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you then.